Am I the antagonist for making a joke about my mom not taking me to the hospital sooner? At the time of this, I was 17, now 19. My mom was 45. I was in my senior year in high school and was super excited about the opportunities senior year would bring as I was in theater. Unfortunately, around the second term in October, I started to feel really ill. I messaged my mom nearly every day for the next month. We went to a destination location for my aunt's wedding at the end of the month. For the whole trip, I would go on excursions, then lay in bed for the rest of the day because I felt so sick, and standing made me nauseous. In November, I basically stopped eating, wasn't going to school at all, and was sleeping all day. I was working at the time and was miserable. My mom gave me some medication that helped a little, but they didn't do much. I was failing school hard because I was too tired to do it. I also started to get sharp pains in my lower abdomen. I had also started vomiting at this time, which I hadn't done in the month before. In the middle-ish of January, my mom took me to the first doctor who was extremely unhelpful, and the things he told me to do made it worse. Then, at the end of the month, my mom took me to a specialist. They said we could try a few tests to see what it was. We did all the tests and nothing showed up. Finally, at the end of March, the doctor told me they could try to take out my gallbladder and see if that helped. We did the surgery and it fixed the problem. So overall, the whole process took about 6 months. About 4 until my mom took me to the hospital. I was extremely depressed because I wasn't seeing any of my friends and was missing out on so many things that came with senior year. It was also my last year that I would be able to play soccer and I was barely able to play in the games. The other day I made a statement that was supposed to be a joke. My cousin was saying how he thinks he had broken his toe, and I said something along the lines of, maybe your mom will take you to the hospital in a timely manner. My whole family uses sarcasm all the time, and I thought I made it obvious it was a joke. I will admit that it may have been a little mean, but I truly didn't mean it to hurt her. She got super offended, flipped out, and started saying that I was making her look like a terrible mother. I had talked to my mother after when I was kinda angry she didn't take me sooner and asked why. She told me it was because she thought I was faking, and my whole family did. That really hurt because I was genuinely suffering for 4 months and was dismissed as a liar. To be fair, I was the kind of kid that hated school for a long time and often faked being sick for a day or two. But I found a way to get through school at the end of the last year with the help of an amazing teacher, and I had even gotten on the honor roll for the first term. I may be the asshole because she tried to help me eventually, and I made her look bad. So am I the asshole for making a joke about my mom not taking me to the hospital sooner? Based on the information provided, you are not the asshole in this situation. It seems like you were genuinely suffering for a long time before your mom took you seriously and sought medical help. Making a sarcastic comment about her lack of urgency does not make you an asshole, especially considering the pain and frustration you experienced during that time. However, it is important to communicate your feelings openly and honestly with your mom, and try to have a conversation about your experiences and emotions surrounding the situation. Am I the antagonist for not redoing my wedding for my father? Backstory: my husband and I now have 4 kids together. The kids' names are Kyle, Jack, Abby, and Ryan. When my husband and I started dating, my father didn't like him, causing some issues. These issues persisted, and I unexpectedly became pregnant with Kyle. My father was furious and decided to cut off all contact with me after he was born, which was very painful for me. Sometimes my mom would help me with Kyle at their house, but my father would not acknowledge either of us, even when I wasn't around, despite my mom's attempts. After a few years, my husband and I got married, and I tried to include my dad, but he refused to come. I ended up walking down the aisle alone on my wedding day, feeling sad and missing him. That's when I stopped trying to mend things with him. However, things changed when the twins were born prematurely. There was concern about Jack's survival, and my mom told my dad that if he didn't fix things then, he might never meet his grandson. Since then, our relationship has improved, and he has become a great grandfather to my kids. He still doesn't like my husband, but they are civil to each other, which is enough for me. Recently, my dad has been expressing regret about not walking me down the aisle and not seeing me get married. He thinks we should redo the wedding properly. However, I feel that I got married properly years ago, and I don't see the need for a redo. I extended an olive branch before, but he rejected it, and I believe this is the consequence. Nevertheless, I can see how much it means to him, and I don't want to jeopardize our good relationship. So am I the asshole for not wanting to redo the wedding? It's understandable that your father has regrets about missing out on walking you down the aisle and witnessing your wedding. However, it's important to remember that you extended an olive branch at the time and he refused it. It's not fair for him to now expect you to redo the wedding just to fulfill his own wishes. Your wedding day is a special moment that has already happened and holds significance to you. It's up to you to decide if you're willing to redo it, but you are not obligated to do so. Your father should understand and respect your decision. Am I the antagonist for not telling my father and stepmother about my son's birth? My 26-year-old female father has been dating Paula, a 38-year-old female, for 4 years. I never got to know her well, as I was about to move out when we met. My 20-year-old female sister still lives between our parents and likes Paula but finds her annoying. Paula has an odd attitude towards pregnancy. It became apparent when my cousin announced she was expecting in 2021. Her daughter would be the first great-grandchild, and we weren't sure if our grandma would be around to see it. After a joyous announcement, Paula commented that she didn't think it was a big deal and didn't understand all the fuss. She maintained this stance throughout the entire 9 months. However, once the baby was born, Paula suddenly became overly interested, which made my cousin uncomfortable. My 28-year-old husband and I announced our pregnancy earlier this year. Initially, my father was thrilled, considering it is his first grandchild. I assumed his excitement would remain. However, according to my sister, Paula was just as condescending as we expected, if not worse. Whenever I shared anything about my pregnancy or the baby, such as the sex, first kicks, or ultrasound pictures, Paula would react with one of 3 phrases. "Okay, that's not a big deal," or "Is that all she talks about these days?" At first I didn't care, but after a few weeks I noticed my father was also losing interest in my pregnancy. As the months passed, he became increasingly distant and aloof. He started ignoring or not paying attention to most of the updates I shared about my baby. He also skipped our name reveal. We opted for that instead of a gender reveal, which was a lunch party with a game, as well as the baby shower because, as he said, Paula doesn't think it's worth it. My son was born on Halloween, and I decided not to inform my father and Paula. After almost 9 months of excuses and disinterest, I didn't see a reason to include them. During my 4-day hospital stay, only our closest friends and family visited us. The day before we left, I posted a picture of my son on Instagram, and that's when my father found out. He called and asked why I hadn't informed him or invited him to meet my baby. I told him the truth. They hadn't made any efforts to be involved emotionally or physically during my pregnancy, so they would hear baby news like everyone else. My father and Paula are furious, accusing me of using my son as a pawn and intentionally keeping them away out of pettiness. They claim I'm holding the fact that they missed a few parties against them. My husband and most of my family agree with me. My sister, though mostly on my side, believes I should have told our father since this is his first grandchild, and he had to find out through social media. She thinks it's all Paula's fault, and I should apologize to our dad. Am I the asshole? Your father and Paula had months to show interest and support in your pregnancy, but instead chose to be condescending and dismissive. They made it clear that they did not find your pregnancy or baby important, so it's understandable that you didn't feel inclined to include them in the process. It's not your responsibility to cater to their feelings or expectations after they consistently showed disinterest. They had the opportunity to be involved, but they chose not to be. Your decision to keep them away from the baby until they demonstrated genuine interest is perfectly reasonable. Your sister may have a point about informing your father, considering his role as a grandparent, but ultimately, the decision was yours to make. It may be worth discussing this with your father separately and explaining your reasons for keeping him out of the loop. Overall, you are not the a-hole for prioritizing your own feelings and well-being during your pregnancy and making the decision that felt right for you. Am I the antagonist for nuking my niece's social media accounts? A few weeks ago, I had my sister and her family over for a barbecue. I'm a 35-year-old male, my sister is 39 years old, and her daughter is 11 years old. The only downside of the gathering was that my niece was constantly on her phone recording TikToks, which was slightly annoying but not my responsibility since she's not my child. I had previously talked to my sister about the importance of being cautious about what my niece posts online and protecting her identity. However, my sister brushed it off, believing that my niece was sensible enough not to make any mistakes. In an attempt to bridge the generational gap, I asked my niece what she was recording. She responded by saying it was a TikTok and that I wouldn't understand because I'm old. Even though I work in tech and know about TikTok, I decided to let it go and investigate the situation later. To my surprise, I discovered that my niece had registered on TikTok using her full legal name and had linked her public Instagram account with the same name. Concerned about the inappropriate content I found on her TikTok, which was not suitable for an 11-year-old, I took the responsible action of reporting her accounts on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok for being underage. Now, fast forward to today, my sister called me asking for help with my niece's iPad. Apparently, she cannot access any of her accounts and is having a meltdown because of it. I guided my sister through the process of unblocking the accounts, but it became clear that they were blocked due to age verification requirements. I'm debating whether to confess that I reported her accounts or simply advise my sister to submit the necessary identification, which would result in my niece being permanently banned. So am I the wrongdoer for taking such actions regarding my niece's social media? You had genuine concerns about your niece's safety online, especially considering her young age and the nature of some TikTok trends. You tried to address this with your sister before taking matters into your own hands and reporting her accounts. It's understandable that you wanted to protect her, even if it meant temporarily blocking her access to her social media accounts. However, it might be a good idea to have a conversation with your sister and niece about online safety and privacy moving forward to avoid any further misunderstandings or conflicts. Am I the antagonist for refusing to accept my ex-best friend's apology? Recently, my stomach has been in knots, and I can't stop thinking about a situation involving my ex-best friend, who is a 21-year-old female. We used to hang out every day and go to cafes and on walks before the COVID lockdown. I even invited her to my sister's wedding. However, we have been drifting apart recently and I noticed a change in her behavior. This change started when I began getting to know a guy for marriage. We are both religious and believe in protecting our virtue for marriage. At first, she seemed excited for me when I mentioned speaking to someone, but during our last coffee meetup, she became extremely judgmental. She made comments like, "You better end it with him next time I see you, and the old you would never do this." I initially thought it was just a bad day for her, but things continued to worsen. Fast forward to now, my other friends and I are planning a beach trip, and I invited her because she had always expressed a desire to go on a staycation with me. However, she responded rudely and bluntly, saying she didn't want to go. When I asked for an explanation, she mentioned the possibility of having plans with her other friends, but nothing was confirmed. After my trip, during the time of her graduation, I saw her graduation post on social media and commented expressing my happiness for her. I also privately messaged her about a job opportunity I could help her with, since I knew she was struggling to find one. I messaged her again to reiterate my congratulations and asked about her graduation party. She replied saying she had no idea. Eagerly awaiting her celebration, I decided to check Instagram one day and discovered that she had invited everyone except me to her graduation party. I felt an overwhelming sense of hurt and rejection, reminiscent of being bullied and left out in my past. This made me realize that she no longer wanted to be friends, so I decided to leave her alone and focus on enjoying my own life. Upon my return from another holiday, she reached out to me randomly with a message asking if I was okay because she heard about a stabbing in my area. I responded politely to her messages, although her attempts to act like everything was normal began to irritate me. Eventually, I called her out on her behavior, but she never properly apologized. She simply said it was fine that we grew apart. This hurt me, especially since I had apologized numerous times for things I hadn't even done to her. I left her last message on read. Recently, I discovered that she blocked me on Instagram, which has left me feeling incredibly hurt. I can't shake this horrible feeling, and I can't help but wonder if I did something to deserve this treatment from her. Based on your story, it seems like your ex-best friend has been treating you poorly and being judgmental towards you for no valid reason. You made efforts to include her in your life and even offered her help, but she was dismissive and eventually excluded you from her graduation party. It's understandable that you feel hurt and confused by her actions. It's important to prioritize your own well-being and surround yourself with people who treat you with kindness and respect. Cutting off toxic relationships is necessary for your own emotional health. If your ex-best friend continues to block you and show no remorse, it might be best to move on and focus on the positive aspects of your life. Remember, it's not your fault and you deserve friendship and support from people who appreciate you. Am I the antagonist for yelling at my mom after she pushed the steering wheel while I was driving? I'm 22 and it's been a little over a year since I got my driver's license. Finally, having my license feels great because I can drive without someone critiquing my driving and accompanying me. Generally, this hasn't been a problem, but my mom tends to panic whenever she rides as a passenger in any car, not just with me. Yesterday, my mom asked me to pick her up from the dealership since she needed to take her car for service and didn't want to use the shuttle. I reluctantly agreed. While driving, my mom repeatedly mentioned that I was drifting too far to the right. This isn't the first time she's brought this up, but I feel like it's more her issue than a problem with my driving, especially considering that nobody else has mentioned it. Additionally, my car has sensors that warn me if I'm too close to another car, and they weren't signaling any issues. We were driving on a street with parked cars on the side. My mom thought I was driving too close to them and became worried that I might hit one. She kept urging me to move to the left and started getting increasingly frantic. When I didn't comply, she actually pushed the steering wheel, causing me to swerve into the adjacent lane and nearly collide with the neighboring car. At that point, the sensors went off. Obviously, this startled me tremendously. Luckily, there was an empty parking space nearby, so I pulled into it and turned on my hazard lights. I then yelled at my mom, questioning her rationale for forcefully pushing the steering wheel, as she risked causing an accident. She responded that I wouldn't have almost crashed if I had made more effort to avoid swerving. She continued yelling, and I firmly stated that I didn't want to hear it and demanded that she get out of my car and find an Uber for the rest of the journey home. Surprisingly, this silenced her. She stared at me for a few seconds, then muttered a meek sorry. This infuriated me even more. At that point, she completely changed her tone and tried to act all sweet, telling me to calm down and suggesting that maybe she could drive the rest of the way home since I seemed too agitated. Although I found this annoying, I eventually managed to calm down. I agreed to take her the rest of the way home, but asked her to please sit in the back seat. She appeared irritated by this request, but I informed her that it was my car, it's registered under my name, and these were the conditions for her being a passenger. I don't think she appreciated my tone, but I wasn't going to back down simply because she's my mom and thinks she can treat me like a 12-year-old. However, now I'm feeling guilty. I love my mom, and overall we have a good relationship. I am grateful that my parents have allowed me to continue living with them while I'm in college. Seeing her annoyance when I asked her to move to the back seat makes me wonder if I should have just kept quiet, continued driving with her in the front, and done everything possible to ensure she wouldn't freak out anymore. Your mom's actions were dangerous and inappropriate. It is incredibly dangerous to push the steering wheel of a moving car, and it could have resulted in a serious accident. Your reaction to her behavior was justified, as you were rightfully angry and scared. Setting boundaries and asking her to move to the backseat was a reasonable solution, given the circumstances. It was your car, and you have the right to establish conditions for passengers. It is important to prioritize safety and your own comfort while driving. However, it is also important to address this issue with your mom and have a conversation about her behavior. Express your concerns and explain the impact her actions had on you. This could be an opportunity for both of you to communicate and find a resolution that ensures safety and respect while driving together in the future. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.